The left wheel of my suitcase caught in the groove between the blue kitchen tile and the threshold, and Evelyn yanked hard enough to tear it free. "There," she said. "Now there can be no confusion." My suitcase tipped onto the gravel. One of Daniel's shirt sleeves hung from the zipper, dragging in the dirt. Behind her, Sunday lunch was still on the table. I could smell rosemary chicken and the pear tart I had brought from Asheville. Daniel stood beside the sink with his mother's property file open in his hands. "Evelyn," I said, "what are you doing?" "I'm ordering you out of my guest house." I looked at my husband. He didn't tell her to stop. He didn't even set down the file. Evelyn stepped back and swung the door toward me. As it narrowed the room to a bright vertical strip, Daniel turned a page. I saw the county seal, a green border, and my name printed beneath the words, "Rental Operator." Then the door shut. The brass swallow key was still in my pocket. For several seconds, I stood staring at the white door I had painted myself, while my husband explained something to his mother on the other side. That was the question I carried away from the guest house. Why would Daniel let her throw me out of a place he had legally put in my hands? The argument had started 11 minutes earlier over a napkin. Evelyn used cloth napkins for Sunday lunch, cream-colored with green-stitched edges, though she served canned cranberry sauce and considered salad dressing a vegetable. One napkin had a faint, rust-colored stain in the corner. She held it up as if it had been submitted into evidence. This was in the guest house linen closet. "I'm sorry," I said. "I must have missed it. You wash these?" "I washed everything Friday." "In your machine?" "In the guest house machine." She made a small sound through her nose. Evelyn could put 4 syllables into a sigh. Daniel kept carving chicken. He was good at looking occupied when his mother began circling a complaint. He had loosened his collar and rolled his sleeves twice, revealing the pale strip where his watch usually sat. His watch was charging beside our bed in the guest house. Or it had been. "I told Grant the property would be ready," Evelyn said. The knife stopped against the cutting board. I looked from her to Daniel. Ready for what? For him to assess. Assess what? The guest house. Daniel set the knife down carefully. "Mom has an idea." It was the word he used when an idea already had a budget. Evelyn folded the stained napkin into a neat square. "Grant runs retreats. Grant owns 3 massage tables and an email list. His wellness weekends have a waiting list. Then he should probably hold them somewhere with 3 massage tables." Evelyn smiled at me. Her smiles had become warmer in public as they became colder in private. That tone is exactly why I wanted to handle this calmly. I waited for Daniel to say he hadn't known. Instead, he rubbed his thumb over a nick in the table. The dining room occupied one end of the conservatory, an old glass structure attached to the back of the main house. Rain had once come through the roof in 7 separate places. I knew because I had placed 7 mixing bowls beneath them while Daniel called contractors, and Evelyn stood in the middle, insisting the leaks had never been that bad when his father was alive. Now the roof was new. So was the long oak table. The guest house maintenance account had paid for part of one of them, though not according to any ledger Evelyn had seen. "I'm not discussing turning the guest house over to Grant," I said. Evelyn blinked. "Turning it over?" "It has bookings through October. Those can be moved." "To where?" "That's an operational detail. It's the entire operation." Daniel gave me a warning look. It was subtle enough that his mother could pretend not to notice, and familiar enough that I felt it in my spine. "We're just talking," he said. "No, you're using we, because you already talked without me." Evelyn laid the napkin beside her plate. "I have been more than patient with this arrangement." The arrangement had brought in just under $52,000 the previous year. It had paid property taxes, utilities, the renovation loan, and 3 emergency repairs in the main house. It had also given Evelyn a reason to complain about strangers turning around in her driveway while accepting their money every Monday. "What arrangement?" I asked. "The one where I run your profitable business for free?" "Mara," Daniel said. Ask her what she means." He looked at his mother. "What do you mean?" It was a beautiful imitation of surprise. Evelyn rose. "I mean that I won't be made to feel like a visitor on my own property." She walked out of the conservatory. Daniel reached for his water. "That went well." "Did you know?" "She mentioned Grant might be interested." "When?" "I don't know. Tuesday." Tuesday, Daniel had called me from a hotel in Richmond and listened while I described replacing the Guesthouse coffee maker. He had asked whether I bought the 12-cup model or the smaller one. I remembered because his attention had pleased me. "You knew Tuesday." "She mentioned it Tuesday. That isn't the same as making a decision." "You let me spend $300 on supplies yesterday." "We need supplies either way." "For Grant's retreats," he meant. The conservatory door opened. Evelyn crossed the lawn carrying my suitcase by its side handle. She had packed fast and badly. A boot heel protruded beneath the zipper, and Daniel's blue shirt was trapped with my clothes. I stood so quickly my chair struck the glass wall. Daniel followed me as far as the Guesthouse kitchen. Evelyn was already pulling open the front door. "Mom," he said, but quietly, like a man reminding someone that the kettle was boiling. She dragged the suitcase over the threshold. Now, on the gravel, I took the swallow key from my pocket and closed my fist around it until the wings pressed into my palm. My car sat in the small parking area near the road. I lifted the suitcase into the trunk myself. Through the guest house window, I could see Evelyn pointing at something in the property file. Daniel bent over her shoulder. He didn't come outside. I drove 11 miles before I realized his shirt was still hanging from my suitcase. The Mountain Vista Motor Lodge had no mountain view. It faced a tire store and a fenced lot containing 6 portable toilets, all bright blue. The woman at the desk wore a cardigan printed with lemons. "One night?" she asked. "I don't know." She looked at my suitcase, then at my left hand. "We do weekly rates." "One night." The room smelled like bleach over old cigarettes. The bedspread had a pattern of red diamonds that moved if I stared too long. I put the suitcase on the luggage rack and pulled Daniel's shirt free. There was a crescent of dirt on the cuff. My phone had 9 notifications. 4 were Guesthouse messages. A couple arriving Friday wanted to know if they could check in an hour early. Someone named Heather had asked whether the path to the conservatory was available for photographs. The platform wanted me to approve a refund for a guest who had accidentally booked twice. There was one text from Daniel. "Can you tell me where the second shed key is?" I laughed once. It came out sharp enough that the woman in the next room stopped talking. The second shed key hung inside the guest house pantry behind the aprons on a hook I had installed. Daniel knew that. Unless Evelyn had already taken down the aprons. Unless Grant was walking the property and wanted to see where we stored folding chairs and the old lawnmower. I typed, "Are you asking as my husband or as Grant's unpaid maintenance man?" I erased it. Then I typed, "Why is my name still on the permit if your mother can remove me from the property?" I erased that too. At last I wrote, "Pantry, west wall." He replied with a thumbs up. I set the phone face down. Daniel and I had been married for 6 years. He was not a stupid man, although he had a gift for becoming helpless around his mother. At work, he negotiated logistics contracts involving refrigerated trucks, warehouse delays, and penalties large enough to make my annual salary look decorative. He could spend 3 hours arguing over liability language with a vendor in Ohio. At the Mercer property, he became a pleasant son, carrying boxes. I used to believe it was grief. His father had died the year before we married. The property passed to Daniel and his mother in a knot of percentages, residency rights, and old promises. Evelyn stayed in the main house. Daniel became responsible for the buildings without ever admitting that responsibility meant money. The guest house had smelled of wet cardboard when I first saw it. There were mouse droppings in the sink and a cracked mirror leaning against the wall. A faded swallow decal clung to the window above the stove. I had touched it and said, "That bird looks like the one on my suitcase." Daniel had wrapped his arms around my waist from behind. Maybe it's a sign. Of tetanus? Of belonging. Back then, Evelyn laughed at my jokes. I found contractors. Daniel found financing. Evelyn made coffee and told us which trees his father would never have cut down. We refinished the blue tile instead of replacing it because Evelyn remembered choosing it with him. When the county required a named rental operator, Daniel said my event work made me the obvious choice. "You're organized," he told me. "People trust you." I had signed where he pointed. Later, when the first brass swallow key tags arrived, Daniel held one in his palm and said, "Now it's official." The memory embarrassed me in the motel room, not because it had been false, because it had probably been true when he said it. My phone rang at 8:17. I expected Daniel. It was Evelyn. "Your toiletries are still here," she said. "Keep them away from Grant's massage tables." There is no need to be vulgar. I don't think you know what vulgar means. A pause. "Daniel says you're upset." "Daniel watched you drag my suitcase into the driveway. You were refusing to leave." "I didn't know I'd been asked." "You raised your voice at my table." "I asked what Grant was assessing." "You made it impossible to have a productive conversation." Evelyn's reasoning always arrived fully circular. You could walk for miles inside it and end up exactly where she wanted you. "What does Grant think is happening?" I asked. "This isn't about Grant." "Then tell me what it's about." "It's about peace. It's about my being able to use what belongs to me without obtaining permission from my daughter-in-law. The county permit belongs to me. A piece of paper does not make you family." That landed so cleanly I couldn't answer. Evelyn softened her voice. "Mara, you're very capable. Sometimes capable people don't realize how much space they take up." Behind her, a cabinet door closed. "Is Daniel there?" "He's helping me understand the file." "What part?" "The business parts." I sat on the edge of the bed. "Put him on." "He's in the other room." I heard Daniel say something too low to make out. Evelyn continued, "You should take a few days. Let things settle. He'll come home tomorrow." Home meant our apartment in Asheville, 40 minutes from the Guesthouse. We rented it because Daniel claimed buying a house while the renovation loan existed would be irresponsible. On weekends, we stayed in the Guesthouse unless it was booked. I had 2 drawers there, 6 dresses in the closet, and the mug I used every Sunday morning. "Evelyn, you changed the locks, didn't you?" Silence. "That's why Daniel wanted the shed key. The new lock sets were stored there." "You gave me no reason to believe you would respect my decision." "You packed my suitcase before lunch. I hoped it wouldn't become necessary." She hung up. I opened my laptop on the tiny desk beneath the air conditioner. The Guesthouse calendar glowed with colored bars. 17 upcoming reservations. Deposits held. Cleaning schedules confirmed. County occupancy taxes due in 12 days. Every account had my name on it. At 9:03, I changed the booking platform password. At 9:11, I paused new reservations. At 9:24, I emailed our cleaner and told her not to enter the property until I confirmed her authorization and payment. Then I opened the shared bookkeeping folder. The maintenance account should have held $8,420. It held $1,706. I went through the transfers one by one. Roof contractor, lumber supplier, glass repair. 3 payments labeled conservatory weatherproofing, approved from Daniel's login. The most recent was dated 5 days earlier, Tuesday. My hands went cold. A new email appeared from the county licensing office. Rental operator amendment. Confirmation required. I opened it. The requested change would add Grant Vale as on-site manager while leaving me as the responsible permit holder. My address, license number, and electronic signature were already filled in. At the bottom was a note entered by Evelyn Mercer. My wife has stepped away from daily operations but has agreed to remain on the permit during the transition. Attached was a scanned signature page from the property file Evelyn had shut behind the white door. I read it twice, then once more, because the first 2 times I was still reading it as a woman whose husband had failed to defend her. The 3rd time, I read it as the person expected to carry the risk. I clicked the button marked Dispute Change. A box opened asking for the reason. I started with, "My husband is a liar." I deleted it and wrote, "I did not authorize this amendment or consent to the use of my signature. Please place the request on hold and contact me directly regarding any future changes to this permit." The next screen offered 3 options: keep the current permit active, request voluntary suspension, surrender the permit. My finger hovered over voluntary suspension. It would have felt good for perhaps 10 minutes. Then 17 groups of guests would be left with canceled trips, our cleaner would lose work, and the vendors I had booked for the October wedding party would come looking for deposits. Evelyn and Daniel could call it spite. Worse, I might believe them. I kept the permit active and requested an inspection. The confirmation arrived at 9:41. Daniel called at 9:43. "Mara, what did you do?" No hello, no question about the motel. He already knew where I was because we shared locations on our phones, another tiny convenience that had once felt like intimacy. I declined an amendment I never agreed to. You paused the calendar. That too. Mom has guests coming next weekend. I have guests coming next weekend. My name is on every reservation. Can we not do this like enemies? I stared at the portable toilets across the road. Under the parking lot lights, they looked like a row of witnesses refusing to get involved. "Did you sign my name?" "No." "The form has my signature. It's from the original application. You took a signature from another document and attached it to a new one. I didn't think of it like that." "How did you think of it?" "As temporary. We had to get the amendment started before Grant could access the platform." "You were going to give him access tonight?" "Eventually." "Then what was today?" "A surprise retirement party." He exhaled. "Mom wanted you off the property before the transition conversation. So you agreed to have the transition conversation after she put my suitcase in the driveway. I didn't agree to that part. You stood there." I was trying not to escalate her. This was Daniel's favorite family verb. Escalate meant respond visibly to something Evelyn had already done. "What did you think I would do?" I asked. "Keep answering guest messages from a motel while Grant used the house?" "I thought you'd let me explain." "You had all of lunch." She blindsided me with the suitcase. "And the amendment?" "Nothing." "And the money from the maintenance account?" "That roof couldn't wait." "You told me the conservatory contractor agreed to installments." "He changed the terms. So you took Guesthouse money." "It's property money. It's supposed to cover repairs for the business whose permit you left in my name. We were going to replace it after the fall bookings." "Who is we?" He went quiet again. I had spent years treating Daniel's silences as gaps I could help him cross. I would soften a question, offer a possible answer, or make a joke so he could step back onto solid ground. That night, I let him stand where he had put himself. Finally, he said, "Can you send me the new password?" "No." "Mara, send me a written statement that you and Evelyn are assuming responsibility for all deposits, refunds, taxes, damages, vendor contracts, and insurance claims from today forward, include Grant." "Don't be ridiculous. Then you don't need the password." He gave one short laugh, the one he used when a vendor made an opening offer he considered insulting. "You know I can't write something like that." "I know." I ended the call. Sleep came in narrow, inconvenient pieces. At 3 a.m, the air conditioner clattered awake and sprayed a mist of water onto the curtain. At 5, a truck delivered tires across the road. At 6:30, I gave up and showered beneath water that changed temperature whenever someone in another room flushed. I put on yesterday's clothes and drove to our apartment. Daniel's parking spot was empty. I climbed the stairs with my suitcase bumping each step behind me. Inside, the kitchen looked exactly as we had left it Friday. 2 clean wine glasses upside down on a towel, a bowl holding 3 soft peaches, and a note in Daniel's handwriting reminding us to take coffee to his mother. Us. I unpacked his dirt-streaked shirt and draped it over the back of his desk chair. My work laptop sat where I had left it. I was due at the Blue Heron Art Center at 9. By 8:30, I had changed clothes, tied back my hair, and applied enough concealer to resemble someone who had spent Sunday evening reading instead of discovering her marriage had a transition plan. My boss, Lena, looked up from a seating chart when I entered the office. "You look expensive," she said. "That's the concealer. It was $32. I meant emotionally. Lena's humor was dry enough to preserve fruit. She ran the center's events with a headset, a mechanical pencil, and no patience for people who use the phrase dream day without a budget. I hung my bag on the back of my chair. "I may need Friday morning off for a county inspection." "Of what?" "My judgment." She waited. The Guesthouse. Her pencil stopped. Lena had recommended our cleaner and two of our most reliable vendors. She knew enough about the property to recognize trouble when I said county. "Is this a building issue?" "I don't know yet." That is a terrible answer. It's the only one I have. I spent the morning revising a banquet order for an accounting association that wanted rustic elegance and plastic flatware. At 11, the county licensing clerk called. Her name was Paula, and she sounded both kind and exhausted. "I have your dispute," she said. "To be clear, are you alleging that the signature was forged?" The word made the office walls seem closer. "I'm saying I didn't sign the amendment." "I understand. If you want to make a formal allegation, there's a separate process." "Will you remove Grant Vail?" "He was never added. The amendment is on hold." "Can my mother-in-law operate the rental without me?" "Not under your permit. If you remain the responsible operator, you must retain control of the premises, records, and guest communication. You're also responsible for compliance. Even if the property owner changed the locks." Paula paused. I heard typing. "You need to resolve your access immediately. I can note the issue, but if you can't exercise operational control, suspension may be appropriate." "What happens to existing bookings?" "That's between you and the booking platform, but they cannot legally be hosted under this permit during a suspension." I looked at my calendar. 17 colored bars had become 17 decisions. "Can you inspect Friday?" "We can do Thursday at 2. Thursday. After the call, I emailed every upcoming guest. I said there was an administrative change at the property and promised an update within 48 hours. I hated how much it sounded like Daniel. At noon, a reply arrived from the couple coming Friday. "We understand. We chose your place because you answered all our questions. Please let us know." I read the second sentence 3 times. Then I called our cleaner, Tasha. "Evelyn already texted," she said. "Told me to come Wednesday instead of Thursday and copy Grant on the invoice. Did she tell you I'd stepped away?" "She said you were taking personal time." "Apparently I'm taking it at the Mountain Vista." "Oh, honey. Don't pity me yet. I might go back for the continental breakfast." "There is no continental breakfast there. They got rid of the waffle machine after the fire." It was the first real laugh I'd had since lunch. "Tasha, don't go Wednesday. I'll pay your cancellation fee." "I'm not charging you a cancellation fee. You held the slot. Then buy me lunch when you stop sounding like a hostage negotiator." She lowered her voice. "Grant called too. He wanted to know whether I could arrange eucalyptus bundles for the showers." "Of course he did. I told him eucalyptus can be toxic to pets." "There are no pets." "I know. I didn't want to do it." At 1:15, Daniel texted. "Mom has a cardiology appointment tomorrow at 10. We can meet at the property while she's out and figure this out calmly." He had used her appointments this way before, as windows in which truth could enter the property without upsetting her. I wrote, "I need access to business records and to document the condition before Thursday's inspection." Thursday? The county is coming. 3 dots appeared, vanished, appeared again. "You called the county before talking to me?" I set the phone down and returned to rustic elegance. The next morning, Daniel waited beside the guest house in his work clothes. His tie was tucked between 2 buttons, and there were dark crescents beneath his eyes. A cardboard box of new lock sets sat open on the porch. "You look terrible," he said. "So do you." "Thanks." "You're welcome." For half a second, we were ourselves. The familiarity hurt more than Evelyn's voice through the motel phone. Daniel held up a new silver key. Front and back, shed is still the old key. What about the main house? You never had a main house key. I had the brass swallow marked M. Mom asked for it back last winter. No. Evelyn had borrowed it when her cousin stayed and never returned it. I had forgotten because I could always knock. Daniel unlocked the guest house. The kitchen smelled like lemon oil. Every surface had been cleared. My recipe box was gone from the shelf, along with the blue mug I used on Sundays. The faded swallow decal remained above the stove, one wing worn translucent by sunlight. Where are my things? Mom packed everything personal. Where? Main house. And the business records? Some are in the file. Which is where? He glanced toward the lawn. Daniel. She took it to the main house. I pulled out my phone and began photographing the rooms. What are you doing? Creating a condition record. You're making this look like a crime scene. I'm photographing towels. That's my point. Fresh white robes hung inside the bedroom closet. A case of glass water bottles occupied the bottom shelf. In the bathroom, 3 bundles of eucalyptus were tied to the shower rail. Tasha found a conscience crisis. I said, Grant bought them. So he has access. Mom let him in last night. Did anyone stay here? No. Did he use the kitchen? Mara, I didn't follow him around. The refrigerator contained 12 green juices labeled Reset. I photographed those, too. In the utility closet, the water heater made a faint ticking sound. A rust-colored crescent marked the pan beneath it. How long has that been there? Daniel crouched and touched the stain. It's dry. That's not what I asked. It was like this when we checked the pipe in March. We were supposed to replace that connector. We were supposed to do a lot of things. The maintenance money was there in March. He stood. You can keep saying that like I bought a boat. You spent it on the conservatory. The conservatory protects the value of the whole property. The water heater protects guests from waking up in a lake. He shoved his hands into his pockets. The plumber said it could wait. The plumber said 6 months at most. Then we have time. We had 4 weeks. I opened the hall closet and counted linen sets, spare pillows, and paper supplies. 2 full cases of toilet paper were missing. So were the bulk coffee packets and every unopened bar of soap. Did Evelyn move supplies to the main house? She said Grant needed to take inventory. Inventory generally stays on the property. You bought those with the property card, the card attached to the business account. The property business. I turned to him. You keep changing what words mean depending on which room your mother is standing in. She isn't here. No, that's why you can talk to me. His face tightened. I'm trying. At what? To keep this from destroying everything. A car door closed outside. Daniel checked his watch. She shouldn't be back. Grant Vale appeared through the kitchen window carrying my blue mug in one hand and the property file in the other. He smiled when he saw us, then slowed. Mara, he said through the open door. Good. Evelyn said you'd stepped away. I looked at Daniel. Grant lifted the file slightly. A brass swallow key swung from a green ribbon tied around its handle. I was hoping you could show me how your booking system works. That won't be happening, I said. Grant's smile remained in place, though it became less connected to his face. He was in his early 50s, lean and carefully tanned, with silver hair that looked damp even when it wasn't. Evelyn had met him at a fundraiser the previous spring. He wore shirts with narrow collars and never seemed to carry anything heavier than an opinion. He glanced at Daniel. I was told Mara had agreed to stay on through the transition. I was told I was having rosemary chicken. Daniel shut his eyes briefly. Grant set my mug on the counter. I may have walked into something. You walked in holding it. I pointed at the file. That contains business records attached to my permit. Evelyn gave it to me. Evelyn doesn't hold the permit. She owns the building. Part of the property, Daniel said. I looked at him. Thank God you found your voice in time to correct the least important thing. Grant placed the file on the counter but kept 2 fingers on it. The brass swallow key dangling from its ribbon was the main house key Evelyn had borrowed. My M was scratched into the back. "Before this gets unpleasant," Grant said, "I've put down money." "With whom?" "Evelyn." "How much?" "That's between us." "Then your booking system is also between you." "It was a facilities deposit." "For what dates?" He looked at Daniel again. Daniel stared at the eucalyptus in the bathroom doorway. "Next weekend," Grant said. "Friday through Sunday. I opened the guest calendar on my phone. There's a 2-night reservation next weekend." I was told it had been canceled. "It hasn't." "Daniel," Mom said they were flexible. "They are guests, not a yoga pose." Grant's fingers lifted from the file. "I have 12 participants who have paid." "Paid whom?" "My company. And your company paid Evelyn." "Yes. Then Evelyn sold you the same weekend my business sold to someone else." The front door opened. "I did no such thing," Evelyn said. She wore a navy cardigan buttoned crookedly and a square of white tape in the bend of her arm from the cardiology appointment. For one irrational second, concern rose in me. It had been trained well. "You're back early," Daniel said, clearly. Her eyes moved from me to the file. "Grant, why did you bring that over here? You told me to review it." "Not with her." "With the permit holder?" I asked. "You have created enough trouble." "I didn't sell the same house twice." Evelyn set her handbag on a chair. "The existing guests can be refunded. Grant's program will earn nearly 4 times the amount." "Gross," Grant said, "before costs." She ignored him. "It makes financial sense." "To whom?" "His participants paid him. His deposit went to you. The refund comes from my account." "The property account." "Show me your agreement with Grant." "There is no reason for you to see it." "Then his event isn't happening under my permit." Her mouth tightened. "You enjoy this." "I enjoy knowing whose name goes on the tax return." "Mara," Daniel said, "take the file and go through the records. We'll sort out the dates." Evelyn turned on him. "That file stays here." "It's a copy," he said. It wasn't. I recognized the water stain along the bottom edge from the winter the guest house roof leaked over the desk. Daniel knew I recognized it. He slid the file toward me. Evelyn's face changed less than I expected. She didn't shout. She looked at her son with the stunned contempt of someone whose furniture had moved by itself. "You would let her take your father's records?" "The rental records aren't Dad's. They concern his property." "They concern my liability," I said. Evelyn picked up my blue mug and carried it to the sink. "Then perhaps you should have considered that before making yourself indispensable." The sentence was meant to cut. Instead, it clarified something. "I'm not indispensable," I said. "I've just been free." I took the file. The county inspector arrived Thursday at 2 in a gray sedan with a magnetic seal on the door. His name was Curtis. He wore a plaid shirt, carried a tablet, and seemed disappointed by all 4 of us waiting in the driveway. "I generally only need the operator," he said. "That's me." I raised my hand. Evelyn folded her arms. Curtis checked the exits, smoke detectors, occupancy notice, parking markers, and fire extinguisher. He ran water in both sinks. He photographed the rust mark beneath the water heater and told me to have the connector replaced within 30 days. Evelyn followed close enough to answer questions he hadn't asked. Grant stood on the porch, pretending to admire the view. Daniel took a work call beside the conservatory and watched us through the glass. At the end, Curtis asked to see my keys. I showed him the new silver key and the brass swallow from my pocket. "Does the owner acknowledge your access?" he asked. Evelyn said, "For now." Curtis entered something on his tablet. "That isn't an answer I can use." Daniel ended his call. "Yes, she has access." "And control of bookings?" "Yes." I held his gaze. "Say it again." "Mara controls bookings under the current permit." Grant stared at the gravel. Curtis looked between us. You folks need an operating agreement more than you need me. We have one, Evelyn said. No, I said. We have habits. The permit remained active. Grant's retreat did not take the reserved weekend, and I did not refund the couple so Evelyn could make more money. They arrived Friday at 4, found their key in the lockbox, and messaged me a photograph of 2 wine glasses on the porch. Perfect. Thank you for making this easy. Evelyn texted 7 minutes later. They parked 6 inches over the marker. I sent the guests a polite note. Then I stopped doing everything no permit required. I stopped stocking Evelyn's preferred tea in the Guesthouse cupboard. I stopped carrying her recycling down on Sunday evenings. I removed the property card from my grocery app and canceled the automatic transfer that covered short months. When a guest asked whether the conservatory was available for photographs, I told them it was privately controlled and gave them the number for the main house. Evelyn answered that call herself. By Saturday afternoon, she had agreed to a time, a fee, and 6 restrictions. On Sunday, she discovered the couple had moved one of her iron chairs into better light. She called Daniel during his golf game, and Daniel called me. Can you go over there? I'm at work. You're always at work when there's a problem now. I was always at work. You called it helping your mother. He went to move the chair. The following week, the new front lock jammed at 11:30 at night. I answered the guests, verified their identity, and gave them the backup code for the rear lockbox. I did not drive 40 minutes to fix hardware I hadn't purchased. Evelyn did. She arrived in slippers and a raincoat, then stood outside in the rain because she had forgotten the rear gate code. Daniel called me from Richmond. Just give her the code. She changed it Monday. She says you did. Ask her what year your father was born. What? That's the code she chose. He hung up. A minute later, the lockbox opened. I smiled into the dark of our apartment and hated myself a little for it. Daniel slept there between trips, usually arriving after I was in bed. We moved around each other with exaggerated courtesy. His dry cleaning appeared on the closet door and vanished the next day. He bought new peaches when the old ones spoiled. Neither of us ate them. One night I found him at the kitchen table with invoices spread around his laptop. The guest house is short for the electric bill, he said. There's money for electric. After the upcoming refunds, there isn't. What refunds? He rotated the screen. 3 October reservations had canceled after Evelyn posted about Grant's wellness weekends on the Guesthouse social media page. Her announcement called the property the new home of Vale Renewal and included photographs of robes, green juice, and my blue-tiled kitchen. Guests had assumed their reservations were being displaced. She doesn't have access to that page, I said. She had the old password saved. Of course she did. We need to push some money over. From where? Our account. No, it'll be replenished. That sentence has cost me enough. Daniel leaned back. You're punishing the property. I'm refusing to subsidize it. You're the permit holder, and you're a co-owner. It's your business. 5 minutes ago, it was property money. He rubbed both hands over his face. Do you hear yourself? Constantly. It's been very educational. He stood, gathered the invoices, then paused beside me. I'm sorry about the suitcase. The apology was so late and so specific that it almost worked. Are you sorry she did it or sorry I didn't come back? He looked toward the bedroom. There was my answer. The October refunds reduced the reserve further. I scheduled the water heater repair anyway. The plumber offered the following Thursday. Daniel asked me to push it to Monday because Evelyn had persuaded Grant to hold a shortened introductory retreat that weekend. Under whose permit? I asked. Yours. I haven't approved it. He's using the guest house as private accommodation. Mom says it's not a rental because his company isn't paying her for this weekend. He already paid her a facilities deposit. For the canceled weekend, she's applying part of it later. That is still payment. Mara, 12 people aren't staying there. 4 facilitators are. The sessions are in the conservatory, which is why she needed the guest house money for the roof. He heard himself too late. I refused to approve the lodging. I sent Daniel, Evelyn, and Grant an email stating that no Vale renewal event was authorized under my permit. On Friday afternoon, Grant called while I was overseeing a lighting test at the Blue Heron. "I want to clarify something," he said. "Did you know Daniel offered me the full October calendar?" The technician above me called down for a color check. I held up one finger. "When?" "Before Sunday lunch." My mouth went dry. "How long before?" 3 weeks. "What exactly did he offer?" "Operational control, your vendor list, existing guest data, once transferred appropriately." "Appropriately?" That was his word. "And what did he say about me?" Grant paused. For the first time since I met him, he sounded embarrassed. "He said you wanted out, that the workload had become too much, and that you were prepared to stay on the permit for 6 months in exchange for a clean buyout." I sat on the edge of the stage. "Did he put that in writing?" "Some of it." "Send it to me." "I'm not looking to become part of a marriage dispute. You became part when you paid Evelyn." He sighed. "I'll speak to Daniel." At 1:12 Saturday morning, my phone rang. The booking platform's emergency number flashed on the screen, followed immediately by Tasha's name. I answered Tasha first. "Tell me you didn't approve that retreat," she said. "I didn't." "Then get out here. The guest house is flooding." By the time I arrived, water was running beneath the front door and down the blue-tiled step in a shining sheet. The silver lock had been forced open. Wet towels were piled across the kitchen. One of Grant's facilitators stood barefoot on the counter holding a suitcase above her head. Daniel came out of the utility closet soaked to the waist. "The connector split," he said. Behind him, the water heater ticked in the dark. Evelyn stood near the porch in her navy raincoat, calling hotels. Grant was moving boxes of bottled juice into his car. I shut off the guest house power, photographed the rooms, and opened the platform message that had triggered the emergency call. The 4 facilitators had booked one night through a private link created from the guest house's old account. The payment had processed under my permit at 6:04 Friday evening. "What account is this?" I asked Daniel. He looked at Evelyn. She lowered her phone. I restored the original page. With what bank information? The properties. The bank information was mine. By dawn, the facilitators were in 2 hotel rooms, the floors were buckling, and the current guest reserve was gone. I paid the emergency lodging and issued the refund because the names on the transaction, the permit, and the insurance policy were all mine. At 9, Evelyn arrived with a plastic folder of printed emails. "You knew about that connector," she said. The top page was my message to Daniel from March. "Plumber says it can wait until fall, but we need to reserve $1,900 and schedule before retreat season." Evelyn tapped the first sentence. "You postponed it." I looked at Daniel. He stared at the warped blue tile. Grant, standing behind him, followed my eyes. Then he reached into his leather bag and removed a thin stack of papers. "I think," he said quietly, "Mara should see what Daniel promised each of us." Grant laid the papers on the wet kitchen counter, holding the corners down with bottles of Reset. The first page was an email from Daniel promising Grant exclusive access to the October calendar. The second described a 6-month transition during which I would remain the licensed operator and provide continuity while Grant learned the business. Provide continuity meant answer messages, coordinate cleaners, file taxes, and take responsibility when water ran under the door at 1 in the morning. Another email promised Evelyn that Grant's deposit would replace the money used on the conservatory. A spreadsheet projected income from retreats at nearly twice what Grant had described as realistic. Beside my name, Daniel had written, "Buyout funded from first 6 months." "You were going to buy me out with money earned under my permit," I said. Daniel squeezed water from his shirt cuff. "That was one possibility." Grant looked offended on behalf of vocabulary. "You presented it as the agreement." "I presented a working model. You told me Mara wanted to reduce her workload." "I do want to reduce my workload," I said. "I'm starting with my husband." Evelyn snatched up the spreadsheet. "You said Grant guaranteed these numbers." I said his numbers supported them. "They are not my numbers," Grant said. "They're Daniel's. Your brochure says premium retreats. My brochure also says preliminary consultation required. We never had one because you kept insisting the building was turnkey." Water dripped somewhere behind the wall. Each drop made Daniel's face tighten. Evelyn flipped through the pages. "You told me the October reservations had agreed to move." I said they could be moved. "That's not the same thing." "No," I said. "It isn't." She looked at me, and for once there was no immediate answer. Grant pulled a final page from his bag. "This is the facilities agreement Evelyn signed. I'm withdrawing from it. I'll absorb what I paid my facilitators, but I expect the unused portion of my deposit returned." "The deposit paid for the roof," Evelyn said. Daniel spoke before she could finish. "Part of it did." Grant removed his jacket from the back of a chair. "Then you can decide which version of this arrangement owes me money." Evelyn stepped in front of him. "You cannot walk away because of one pipe." "I'm walking away because I've been negotiating with 3 people who were told 3 different stories." "I told you the truth. You told me what you wanted. Daniel told me it had already been approved. Mara is the first person who showed me a permit." He looked at me. "I'll send you the full email chain." Then he left, carrying his leather bag and leaving the green juices on the counter. Evelyn watched his car disappear down the drive. Her shoulders seemed to narrow inside the navy raincoat. "You ruined this," she said. I was too tired to ask which one of us she meant. The insurance adjuster arrived Monday. He took moisture readings, photographed the buckled floor, and asked why a private event had occupied the guest house after I had stated in writing that it wasn't authorized. "I'd like the answer too," I said. The property policy would cover some of the physical damage after the deductible. The rental rider would not reimburse the event expenses until the insurer reviewed who had represented the booking and how they had accessed the old account. The platform removed the private listing within hours, but the hotel rooms and refund had already consumed $3,860. I paid Tasha for the cleanup. I refunded the couple scheduled for the following weekend and offered to help them find another rental. I notified every remaining guest that the property was temporarily unavailable. Some took immediate refunds. 2 accepted later dates, which I warned might never open. I did not pay for the floor. Evelyn emailed an estimate to me with the subject line, "Your responsibility." I forwarded it to Daniel and replied, "Please coordinate as property owner." She sent it back 4 minutes later. "You postponed the repair." I attached my full March email chain. Beneath the sentence she had printed was Daniel's response. "Agreed. I'll keep the $1,900 untouched and schedule before October." Then the transfer receipts showed where the $1,900 had gone. Evelyn didn't reply. The quiet lasted until Tuesday evening when Daniel came home carrying takeout from the Thai restaurant where we used to celebrate good news. "I got basil chicken," he said. I sat at the kitchen table with a stack of refund confirmations. "Why?" "You haven't eaten. You don't know that. There's nothing in the refrigerator but mustard and peaches. There are 4 peaches. They keep multiplying." He set a container in front of me and took the chair across the table. For a while, neither of us spoke. The smell made me realize I was hungry. "Grant sent the emails," I said. I figured. "You offered him my vendor list. I offered to introduce him. You offered him guest data. After proper consent." You used that phrase once, in parentheses. Daniel opened his container but didn't eat. I was trying to create an exit that worked for everyone. Did it work for me in your head? "You complained constantly about the guest house. I complained to my husband about being tired. You said you didn't want to spend another summer washing strangers' sheets. So your solution was to keep my name on the permit while somebody else rented the beds, temporarily. That word is doing a lot of work." His jaw moved. "Mom's expenses are going up. The guest house needs to earn more. Grant could have done that without us giving up the asset. And what did I get? A buyout. From profits I would be legally responsible for. We could have used it for a down payment. There it was, not just Evelyn's roof or Grant's opportunity. Our future held out like a clean towel over a flooded floor. "How long have you been looking at houses?" I asked. "I haven't." "But you were going to." "Yes." "With me?" He stared at me. "Of course, with you." I closed the takeout container. "Do you understand that you planned a house for us by removing me from the place I built? I was trying to separate our marriage from my mother's property." "No. You were trying to make me keep supporting her property after she removed me." "She didn't think of the permit that way." "You did." His eyes dropped. That was worse than anything Evelyn had said. She believed ownership was a feeling inherited with furniture. Daniel understood forms, liability, signatures, and leverage. He knew exactly what my name protected. He had simply decided it should protect everyone except me. "When your mother dragged out my suitcase," I said, "what were you afraid would happen if you stopped her?" "She would have made it impossible." "Made what impossible?" "The transition, the financing, any chance of getting her to accept a sale later. So you let her do it to keep her cooperative. I thought I could fix it after she calmed down." "You thought you could fix me after she calmed down." He looked toward the dirt-streaked blue shirt still hanging over his desk chair. Neither of us had touched it. "I'm sorry," he said. I believed him. That was the difficult part. Believing his regret did not make me believe in his protection. I moved out of our apartment with 6 boxes, 2 garment bags, and the scratch suitcase. Lena had a vacant studio above the Blue Heron's West rehearsal room, usually rented to visiting performers. The plumbing complained, and the windows faced an alley where delivery trucks backed up at 7 every morning, but it had a narrow kitchen and a fire escape large enough for 1 chair. Daniel helped carry the boxes. At the bottom of the stairs, he kept hold of the last one. "Are we separating?" "Yes." "For how long?" "I don't know." He nodded as if I had given him a delivery estimate. The county scheduled a follow-up review for the end of the month. My permit expired 5 days after that. Paula sent renewal forms, a corrective action list, and a reminder that I had to maintain control of the premises for as long as the permit remained active. I kept the silver key. I answered the insurer. I organized refunds and paid taxes on the legitimate bookings. I sent Evelyn and Daniel weekly statements showing every dollar in and out. I removed my payment information from the utilities, canceled my vendor discounts, and transferred Tasha's final invoice from the business reserve. The reserve reached $92. Evelyn tried to hire Tasha directly. Tasha asked for her commercial rate, which was nearly twice what the Guesthouse had paid. "You never charged me that," I said when she told me. "You did the laundry." So? So now I know who was doing half the job. Evelyn did not hire her. The damaged floor came out in strips. The blue tile survived, though 3 pieces near the utility closet cracked when the subfloor swelled. Daniel found replacement tile online at a price that made him call me from the property. "Do you remember the name of the salvage place outside Hendersonville?" "Yes. Can you send it?" "No." A pause. "Could I hire you to locate it?" "For my event planning rate, 2-hour minimum." He laughed despite himself. "You're serious." "I am." He found the tile himself. Without upcoming rental income, Evelyn could not qualify for the refinance she wanted. Grant formally demanded the remainder of his deposit. Daniel's co-ownership share made him responsible for property expenses, but he didn't have enough cash to cover the repairs, refunds, and conservatory balance without selling investments he had called untouchable. He began talking about selling his share. Evelyn began talking about betrayal. Their voices carried across the lawn during my final condition check. I stood in the empty guest house photographing the new connector while they argued inside the conservatory. "You made me believe she had agreed," Evelyn said. "You wanted to believe it. You said the permit could be changed. It could have been if you hadn't thrown her out before she signed anything." The sentence stopped me. Not because it was new, but because Daniel finally set it in the room where it belonged. Evelyn saw me through the conservatory glass. Her face hardened, and she closed the door. Daniel came to the Blue Heron the evening before the county review. I was resetting tables after a donor dinner. He helped fold a linen without being asked, bringing the corners together the way I had shown him years ago. "I met with a broker," he said. I kept folding. "We can sell my interest, pay the renovation balance, return Grant's deposit, and clear the other costs." What happens to Evelyn? She'd keep her residency rights. A buyer would own my share and probably want terms for a future sale. She'll hate that. She already does. And then? He placed the folded linen on the cart. "Then you and I buy something that's ours." The room was quiet except for the ice machine behind the catering door. "There's a small house near Haw Creek," he continued. "Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, a deck. We could afford it after the sale." He showed me the listing on his phone. The kitchen had yellow cabinets. The deck faced a line of maple trees. For several seconds, I let myself see our coffee mugs beside the sink. I saw Daniel replacing a loose board before I asked. I saw a Sunday morning that belonged to neither Evelyn nor a guest calendar. Then he said, "The broker needs the rental income included in the valuation." I handed back the phone. "How long?" "Just through closing, maybe 3 months." "My permit expires next week. You can renew it. We'd shut down operations, but the active permit preserves the business value." "And the amendment." His eyes moved away. "The broker's concerned that a disputed filing could scare buyers. If you sign a statement saying it was an administrative misunderstanding," I laughed. "Mara, listen. We're finally talking about leaving. You're asking me to protect the sale. I'm asking you to protect our chance. It's always our chance when you need my signature." He gripped the back of a chair. "If you don't renew, the guest house is valued as damaged residential space. Mom may have to sell part of the land." "That's a consequence. It's a punishment." "No. A punishment would be keeping the permit and using it to control them. I'm giving it back." "To who?" "No one." He looked genuinely frightened then, not of the county or the broker, of an empty space where my cooperation had always been. The next afternoon, Evelyn arrived at the guest house pulling my suitcase behind her. Daniel must have taken it from our apartment after I moved. I had left it in the hall closet with several guest house linens and my old recipe box inside. Evelyn had added the paper ledgers, unopened soap, and the toiletries she packed after Sunday lunch. The same torn wheel caught on the blue-tiled threshold. "I'm returning business property," she said. "You packed my recipe box." It was in the guest house. So was I. Curtis waited in the kitchen with his tablet. Paula had joined by video on his screen. Daniel stood beside the counter holding the green-bordered property file. Evelyn set the suitcase upright. "We are prepared to correct the access problem." Curtis looked at me. "And the repairs?" "The connector is replaced. The floor is stable. The insurance claim remains under review." Paula asked whether I intended to renew as responsible operator. Daniel opened the file to the renewal form. Beneath it lay his statement describing the false amendment as a clerical error. A pen rested across both pages. I took the old brass swallow key from my pocket. The lock at once opened no longer existed. I set it on the permit. "I'm not renewing." Evelyn's hands closed around the suitcase handle. "You can't decide that here." "I'm the only person who can. The property depends on that permit." "No, it depended on me pretending the permit was only paperwork." Daniel's face had gone still. Paula asked me to confirm that all legitimate guest refunds and taxes had been addressed. I gave Curtis the statements, receipts, platform records, transfer history, and Grant's emails. I accepted responsibility for the reservations I had authorized. I documented the private event, the reused signature, and the money Daniel moved after promising it would remain for repairs. The county closed the permit at expiration. It did not settle our marriage, repair the floor, or pay anyone's debt. It simply stopped my name from absorbing decisions made behind a door that had been shut in my face. Evelyn would have to complete the remaining work and apply with a qualified operator before renting again. Without active income, Daniel moved forward with selling his share. The likely price dropped. Grant's deposit came from the proceeds. The conservatory loan remained theirs. Outside, Daniel touched the suitcase handle. "I'll take this to your place." "No." I pulled it over the threshold myself. The left wheel still dragged. I carried it when the gravel became uneven. Months later, it rested beside the door of the studio above the blue heron, its faded swallow decal turned toward the room. I had washed Daniel's dirt from the zipper, but left the scratch across the bird's wing. On the wall above it hung the brass swallow key tag. The key itself had gone back into the property file. The tag held the key to my own door.